Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show.
Mahabharata war happened for 18 days. In fact, Vyasadeva used that as 18 as a number, and you see it everywhere. 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, 18 Aukshohini battalions kind of thing fought, 11 on one side, 7 on another side. War lasted for 18 years. So, they put some magical numerology number into it. 18 parvas of Mahabharata. So 18 Aukshohini, have you heard that word? Like a battalion. The modern day, think of it as a battalion. So there were 18 Aukshohini, that much worth of soldiers fought during the Mahabharata war. 11 on the Kaurava side, 7 on the Pandava side. If you look at the Mahabharata descriptions of what that Aukshohini means, how many folks on horses and camels or whatever, and elephants, the total number for 18 comes out equal to 4 million male. 100% of the people who fought were men.
4 million.
4 million, 40 lakhs.
40 lakh people.
Okay. I want you to take this number, and in the engineering side, we are going to solve a lot of equations here. Equation number 1. So 40 million men fought for 18 days, and practically 99.99% of them died. That's what Mahabharata tells us. The estimated population, and they keep on re-estimating because modern new tools, right? The number, when I did this about 5 years ago, the number is between 5 to 20 million for our total human population, okay, in 6 millennium BC. True or false, let's not go there, it's not important. So for our exercise, I'm going to take it 20 million, the higher number. Now, in the Mahabharata, the people came from as far west as Syria.
Wow.
And as far east as Indonesia, or maybe not Indonesia, border of Indonesia, like Cambodia and something like this. Okay. And that's the range. Okay. For example, the Bhagadatta, who fought during the Mahabharata war, came from Iraq, Baghdad. Okay. But that's another subject. Now, what I'm saying is this is a pretty decent area. And for simplicity, I'm going to say out of that 20 million, half of the people were affected by the Mahabharata war, meaning people came from this area. So 10 million people were affected. They all did not come. So if there are 10 million people who kind of related to the Mahabharata war, simple mathematics we can do is 10 million, in 10 million, 5 million would be women, 5 million would be men, a reasonable thing. Okay. Now the interesting part. Out of that 10 million or 5 million men, 4 million men were gone in 18 days. What are we left with? 1 million men and 5 million women. What is that ratio? Ratio is 5:1, right? So suddenly there is this Y chromosome, the male chromosome, the patriarchal chromosome bottleneck. Like suddenly a huge male population is gone. So now there are only 1 million men for 5 million women, so to say, for the further population. And so that bottleneck in the Y chromosomes is going to come out as a signature into the future population. Make sense? Okay. Now if we go here and type Monica Carmine space 2015. You got that Monica researcher there. Yeah, 15. Okay. Now, stay with this paper. Yeah.
It's commonly thought that human genetic diversity in non-African populations was shaped primarily by an out-of-Africa dispersal 50 to 100,000 years ago. Here we present a study of 456 geographically diverse high-coverage Y chromosome sequences, which means basically men from different parts of the world.
Yeah, Y chromosome is men. Yeah.
Okay. Including 299 newly reported samples. Applying ancient DNA calibration, we date the Y chromosomal to most recent common ancestor in Africa at 254 and detect a cluster of major non-African founder haplogroups in a narrow time interval at 47,000 to 52,000 years ago. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Consistent with a rapid initial colonization model of Eurasia and Oceania after the out of Africa bottleneck. In contrast to demographic reconstructions based on mtDNA, we infer second strong bottleneck in Y chromosome lineages dating to the last 10,000 years. We hypothesize that this bottleneck is caused by cultural changes affecting variants of reproductive success among males.
The last line they say it because they don't know about Mahabharata.
So they are saying that something
happen
happened
in the reproductive
to guys.
They're explaining, right?
But it can't be possible that a bottleneck that happened only one other time in the last 50,000 years
Yes.
happened because so many men's penises stopped working. That's what they are trying to
Yes.
possibly say, but it doesn't make sense. Even they are saying that we don't know why this is happening.
No, so many penises stopped working because they were dead in 18 days. Okay, we are going to look at that. Don't read too much into the diagrams below, okay? But look at the colors, like the sort of a blue color is for India, and you know those dot, yellow is for Europe, if you notice. Okay, the sort of a orange is like for what is that? Russian
Siberia.
area, correct? And so on. So now, so that blue area that you're seeing is India, so to say. Okay, and you find that all of them, the yellow is Europe, and so on and so forth. Okay, the light blue is the north, like Middle East, and so on and so forth. The dark green below is East Asia, like east of India.
I think the dark green is South Asia.
Oh, South Asia, sorry. The blue is East Asia, right?
Right.
The blue. Okay. So follow those kind of, I mean, just stay there right now. And you see a sudden bottleneck, which is that fall, you see. Okay.
In all of them.
No, it's in all of them. We'll see why. Actually, what you'll find is that the green fall, if you see the green happens before yellow.
Right.
Yeah. Because the epicenter is India. And I'm going to give you a metaphor to explain that. Okay. Can you go down and see there's another beautiful graph. I hope it is there. So look at South Asia. Okay. You see where South Asia is?
Yes.
See where the straight line starts going down. Compare that. They're exactly on the same scale. Go up to Europe and notice the bottom that Europe is later than South Asia. You see? It's happening later. Okay. By the way, the other graphs I showed, nobody participated in Mahabharata war from South America, from Oceania, like Polynesia, or the northern Russia. And if you look at their graphs, actually you can see it right here too. They have no, for example, let's look at, say, Africa. Africa shows some. Maybe that is because of Ghatotkach, you know. I'm just joking. But well, first look at the dark green line, which is South Asia, which is India. South Asia is a very bad word, you know, by the way. That is to deal with the inferiority complex of Pakistanis. Okay, that's why the word South Asia is used. It's a word. It's a global conspiracy.
As in?
India. What South Asia they're talking?
Okay.
You know. Okay. So that India. Look at the first line. Truly, the one that really came to the bottom, the first line to deviate, come down, the deepest, the green line I'm following. And then if you follow, it stays longer at the bottom and almost the last one to recover. You see? That is, so it's like a Bhuj, you know, where we had the earthquake. That is
genetic
the last
bottleneck.
place.
Massive genetic bottleneck.
And last one to come out. Okay.
Right.
Then follow quickly two. One is the Near East, which is Middle East. You see that orange kind of line? Just after green, it follows down and then goes straight up. Which is like, it had an effect like a Bhagadatta's army, let's say. But then it quickly recovered.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Then you look at the East Asia, like that Southeast Asia, which is to think of, you know, like Myanmar,
right.
You know,
Thailand,
Indonesia. So they also are affected, not as much as India, and also they recover. Now look at the yellow line. Here it is very easy to see Europe. See, whereas India is like, I mean, now you may ask the question, or skeptic should ask a question. I am saying the effect happened in 7,500 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So that is that point between 7 and 8. So somebody will say, and actually people do ask me, oh, but why the green line is already going down from 10? Okay. Now this is a good question, but that immediately tells me the person doesn't know anything about mathematical modeling. If there are no data points, this initial, you know, where you see 12 and they have shown one constant point, that's the control group. They assume that everything is same, you know. Now from that, the first deviation data point may be found around 7.5 or 8. But how do you connect those points? Either you connect by straight line, concave, convex. That's why it is like that.
Because actually it's a steep fall.
It is a steep fall.
But on the graph, you can't show a steep fall.
Correct. Because they're doing modeling and they don't know Mahabharata. So they have no reason to wait for 5561 BC to bring it down. You know, so that's the point. So this is fabulous. So the epicenter is India. And keep on going down. You are going to find one more fascinating.
One second. I just want to stay on this graph
fine.
because I am also noticing what you said about Africa.
Yeah.
Which has again a smaller dip,
Correct.
more gradual dip.
Correct.
I want to see what you're speaking about, the Andes, which is
nothing. Andes. Look at Andes.
Nothing until roughly 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. Which is what?
When Europeans found it.
No, not 2,000 years ago. They found 500 years ago. But some other migrations happen within that, whatever. We don't know what happened, right?
My bad.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it could be that same 10,000 versus 7,000 ka logic.
You said it.
Andes.
You said it. There is no data point.
That you can't show a steep fall, so it's a gradual...
Yeah, so what do they do, right?
So what is actually 500 years ago? On the graph, you see it as 2,000 years ago.
Good point.
So Andes, again, the fall happens perhaps because of European invasion.
Yeah.
And which other... Siberia, which is the pink line.
Yeah.
Again
goes like haywire.
Yeah, no connection to these falls.
See how consistent it is. And none of these guys, there is no conspiracy between these 92 genetic scientists and Nilesh Oak. Okay. So 4 million people gone. The 10 million people in the area where the Mahabharata war was affected, so to say, which is what? India, Middle East, and further east of India. So think of those colors, the blue, the light blue, and a green. Okay. Now what happens? So 4 million people are gone. Therefore, now the ratio after the war is women to men. Not the population, although I'm showing population, but the genetic diversity is 5:1. Okay. Now, little bit of tough science. Okay, stay with me. When nothing like that is happening, like a couple comes together to make a baby. A man has Y and X. Everyone follows. The lady has X and X. Every woman has 2X, right? So if you just take couples like that, what is the ratio of a variation in X chromosome to Y chromosomes?
There are 3 X's, 1 Y.
3:1. So that is my baseline. Now what happens is when you look at the ratio, and I will send you that graph. What the graph is going to show is when you look at the female diversity to male diversity, the ratio is around 3, which is how it should be. When it comes to a certain time, and that time, if you look at it, is by the way 7,500 years ago. 556. It goes like a peak of 16:1. So 16 excess variation to 1 Y, which is to say, that is a absolute number. For relative number, we have to take 16 divided by 3. Are you following? Because 3 is my noise, signal to noise ratio. Yeah. Okay. So 16 divided by 3 is what? 5 approximately. Now bring back to here. So out of 10 million, 4 millions are gone, men are gone. Now the ratio remaining is 5:1. Monica Carmine paper written in 2015, who knows nothing about the Mahabharata, they are saying there was a male gene bottleneck, Y chromosome bottleneck in 7,500 years ago, 5561 BCE. I mean, they don't say 5561 BCE. The extent of that bottleneck was 16:1 on an absolute scale or 5:1 on a relative scale. 5:1 based on a population, 5:1 in their paper. Yep. One more thing. And what was the epicenter? Where was the impact of this the highest, the deepest? India. That is that green line. If you see there is another curve.
Is this the graph you wanted to show?
So yeah, here. See 16:1. Look at the y-axis. That NE ratio is like an absolute scale. The female diversity to male diversity. NF over NM. So that peak that you see, if you draw the line from that ultimate peak, it will come to 7,500.
Understood.
Look at how wonderful is that peak.
I wonder what happened on the previous peak, which is at 55,000 years ago.
Great, you asked, right? That will be another episode.
Perhaps another
My
war.
speculation is that is the Dasharatnya Yuddha described in the Rigveda.
Of 10 kings.
10 kings.
That is why
Dasharatnya. Yeah. But see, correct, 10 kings. But the information about that Dasharatnya Yuddha is so little that I tried to do it. We cannot do much with it.
Too far back.
Too far back. No, too far is not a problem. The others, my speculation was also like Parshurama getting rid of the wild Kshatriyas miscreants 21 times.
Damn.
Yeah. The male again,
Yeah, because in Sanatan Dharma, you don't kill off women.
Correct. Yes. And one more thing I want to show you. This is very interesting. Just stay there on this graph. No, stay on this graph. Look, after 80 and 70, between 80 and 70, there's, see a fall in the other direction.
Yeah, as in there's more males at these points.
Yeah, correct. Like as if women died, right? Now there was a Toba explosion there. Okay, now we don't know again why men survived more and women died. Maybe men were always out there and survived, everyone in the caves, women, making the chutneys,
Yeah, maybe the
and
caves...
all the ash went in and they died. I mean, this is all speculation. But that matches with the Toba explosion. It happens in the other direction. It's a perfect data for additional research. Yeah. So this graph, I can tell you, remember I said my brief history of Hindu civilization starts with 75,000 years. This graph is going there. Anytime you hear of a earthquake, immediately 3 questions typically come to our mind. If you ask any one of these, they will say the same thing. Immediately, oh my God, earthquake? Serious? Oh yeah, serious earthquake. We ask, how serious? Meaning Richter scale. We say, where did it happen? And we say, when did it happen? Think of this, the Mahabharata war, as a genetic earthquake. How serious it is? 16:1 or 5:1. That is the Richter scale, genetic scale. When did it happen? 7,500 years ago. Where did it happen? India.
And the West knows that it happened, but they don't know why.
Now, the effect that you see on Europe, if I have those additional plots, I will show you that dip that happens or the change that happens in Europe is not in 7,500 years ago. It is about 2,000 to 3,000 years afterwards. Now you tell me what happened.
That the same descendants eventually gradually migrated out of India.
Bingo. That is, these are the post-Mahabharata migrations. Now, is this just a guesswork? Of course, here genes is telling us, but it's not a guesswork. We have the evidence not only for human beings, we have a evidence for a migration of cows. The Zebu cows going to Middle East and further, and those times are 3000 BC, 2000 BC. The domestic mouse, this is something fascinating, I'm saying for all Indians, but jokingly I say people from UP also, because you take the gene pool of the mouse, the domestic mouse. And what is the importance of domestic mouse? It's directly connected with agriculture. Establish agriculture, because that's where it survives and stays. Right?
In farms.
And in the houses, nearby houses, in our houses, going around, stored grains and so on. There are many varieties of domestic mice, but let's say there are 3-4 main varieties. They have gone all around the world. Okay. But if you start back to the future kind of backwards and start going back after the gene, who is the father of this mouse and who is the father of this mouse and so on, it ends up in India, and within India it ends up in UP. This is a Bonhambi paper 2007. There are multiple papers. That domestic Indian mouse is seen as far as South France and Israel, Ramayana times 12,000 BC, Mahabharata times 5,500 BC and afterwards. Mouse did not just fly and say, let me take a vacation in Switzerland. It went with the migrations.
Wherever the humans went.
Where the human beings.
Okay. Kind of a devil's advocate style question. I get that even genetic studies point towards an outward migration from India. And this has been the case that even a genetic scientist brought on the show. So it's not just you as a historian. Right. It's an actual scientist also who said the same thing. My other question is that when we talk about India, okay, we usually visualize the Indian map. Some people might visualize the Akhand Bharat map, which is Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Now, when you're talking about Mahabharata, this is the first time I've actually heard someone on the show visualizing a map of ancient Bharat that spreads from Indonesia right up till Syria.
Now, Syria is like, these are the outskirts, but the folks have come and participated in the Mahabharata war. But even their names, for example, Iraq, the Bhagadatta is a Sanskrit name.
For Baghdad.
Yeah, for Baghdad. Actually, do you know how they say Baghdad? Baghdad, and that's and by the way, the narration of that Prague Jyotishpur, which is where Bhagadatta was from, is very consistent how it is to the west of India in Mahabharata, but also in the Ramayana.
We spoke about how ice ages are a part of the Earth's history.
Correct.
And in that, in the last podcast, we spoke about how in the Ramayana, when they've described the West, they've described the Alps as the edge of the West.
Correct.
Right? I don't know if there's something.
Yes, that's correct.
I am assuming that again, Europe, North America were not habitable at that point.
Correct.
Because of that Earth's tilt that we spoke about.
Tilt and the shift of the
North Pole
and all that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was just too cold for human beings to be there.
Correct.
So perhaps this entire stretch from Syria to Indonesia, while as Indians, we're very proud that, oh, this was Bharat, and it becomes a source of pride.
Correct.
When you detach yourself from the emotions of being Bharatiya or being Indian, and just look at yourself as a human, no different from the humans in Pakistan or Iraq or Syria.
Absolutely.
Okay, because they're very different from us in many ways culturally today.
Yes.
It's a way of saying that this ancient culture was spread across this strip because it was the only habitable.
That is the right way to say. Therefore, I say once you go beyond 2000 BC, they are us. In the sense that there is no they out there.
Okay. See, now the extreme left has already switched off from this podcast. The extreme right is rejoicing in joy, saying that, dekho, Sanatan Dharm hi ultimate hai. But that's an over-emotionalization of the same human concept.
Yeah. And if they read Mahabharata, then their enthusiasm may be tamed down a little bit further. For example, when Sanjay is describing the whole entire Prithvi, so to say, to Dhritarashtra just before the war in some context, to distract Dhritarashtra. Maybe he's too worried, but doesn't want to change the strategy. He is saying there are lands. For example, there is a reference to Hari Varsha. He says it's better than Bharata Varsha. And in what way? The people are more relaxed, people are more beautiful, the ladies are beautiful, more fruits, fresh fruits, fresh air, better air, so on and so forth. When the descriptions of Patal come, South America, the Bhagavad Purana also will say, oh, their life standards is much better than ours. Our narrators are very objective. Ancient narrators are very objective. So there is no point taking a false pride.
Hum Sanatani. Good.
Yeah.
It's why we need to you need to view these conversations as a student of human history rather than Sanatani history.
Yeah.
Anyway.
As a human history, for example, when I go to, I have been lucky, with the exception of, I would say, New Zealand and Australia. I've been to practically all places around the world, thanks to the companies I work for and my luck, And every place I go, I make personal relationships.
Yeah.
Meaning, I go to Italy. Right now, I know 10 friends of mine who were my colleagues 20 years ago, but I can still go to their house and actually have a pasta made in the house. Same thing in China. My friends in China will take a time off if I go there because my Chinese is very bad, 5 sentences maybe, and actually travel with me. And when you start interacting with them, you realize no difference. Actually, they will give life for you. That's the kind of relationships you build.
Yeah. There are a couple of questions I have for you. One is about the Younger Dryas impact theory and the effect it had on India. And the second one is this Toba explosion now, because you only brought it up. Have either been mentioned in Shastras?
Great question. There are descriptions in the Shastras which a creative mind like yours truly can connect with the Toba explosion, but we don't know for sure. I will mention one. Let's take one. There are few. In the Vana Parva of Mahabharata text, there is a sage Markandeya, and he's talking to Pandavas. They are in the Vanavas. And he's talking of ancient history. Now, sage Markandeya is described as someone who has seen many creations. That is how he's described, whatever that means, the metaphorical, esoteric meaning. And he says, oh, in the previous creation, it happened something like this. And when he's describing one of these creation or the destruction, end of some creation, he is, and some other time we can pull these descriptions from Vana Parva, where for verses after verses, it goes how there was a fire everywhere and ash falling from the sky and so on. Now, it's a conjectural evidence. I would love to find additional evidence so that I can connect. Other than that evidence and a Toba explosion, I don't have anything to tell me that how Markandeya was there 70,000 years ago.
Geologically speaking, what happened in the Toba explosion? It was just a massive volcanic
Massive volcanic ash. Now that is a lake there because, in Sumatra Island. It's called Toba Lake or something. And that was one of the biggest. I mean, on the Google, you can see different volcanic eruptions, and Toba comes out the biggest in last 100,000 years or something. It totally blanketed India. And not just India, beyond India, like Middle East, parts of Middle East, even the Uttara Kuru, Uttara Madra seas, you can see the evidence under the seafloor for this ash layer. So it was a massive event, and people are estimating in different ways. Some people say there was this, what you call a dark winter, or that comes afterwards for 10 years. Others say for 1,000 years. And these are different estimates. How many people survived? That's another one. We don't know that number.
All we know is that women died out much more than men because of the graph you just showed.
Yes.
Studying genetic sciences.
Correct.
Because you can track back matrilineal lineage, patrilineal lineage.
Right. Now, keep in mind, when you go back to 70,000 years, our genetic data also gets weaker and weaker. So although they can draw the graph, there may be 5 samples. I mean, I don't know what was there.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, again, this is just pure hypothesis.
Yeah.
I am not a woman from 70,000 years ago, so I might be entirely wrong, but I've had girlfriends in my life. And I have noticed that girls tend to feel colder more easily. It's a very basic human thing.
Good point.
Now, after the Toba explosion, there's a massive volcano, there's ash in the sky.
Yeah.
It goes down to sub-zero temperatures. The earth becomes freezing cold.
Yeah.
There's also a fantastic movie called Society of the Snow, which I highly recommend you watch. It's about the Andes plane crash. You know, which
Alive, the movie Alive. Yeah,
same. But it's a 2023 or 4 ka movie.
Got it.
They show the same thing, that there are a few women with those guys in that plane who eventually, one of them they've shown passes away because of the cold. So this is just, again, hypothesis that in such cold weather, maybe some of the guys, not even all the guys, some of the tougher guys survived.
Yes. And the woman dying because of the cold is more. So when I write the book, when I mention this hypothesis, I will mention your name.
Oh, thanks.
No, that's a great point. And you see, the way you just thought, you thought off the cuff, the way you thought through, that's exactly how you do. Like, I said, hey, what is this another peak? Is it the Parshuram? Is it the Dasharatnya Yuddha? But if you notice, I have not immediately made up my mind and just to make some headline, I have just gone and said it is this or that. I don't have evidence, but I can say that with the Mahabharata because the evidence is shouting from all sides.
Anyone who's with us in this podcast until this point is fascinated by this conversation in the same way that I am. Is fascinated with ancient history. I can vouch for the fact that Randall Carlson has done an episode just like this. He's done multiple episodes with Joe Rogan, but it's in a very similar light. He shows graphs. He has some very similar points to what you're making.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.